Hello. Thank you for being here with me today. I am really excited to kick off this conversation about rethinking and redesigning and rebuilding educational systems. Right now, we have a functioning school system and a non existent education system. To me, education is a tool for liberation. And schools are societal management mechanisms. I'm not trying to get all big brother here, but either the system operates to oppress or it operates to liberate. And I don't know what I could say if it doesn't feel already that it is oppressive. And so before we start dreaming anew, I would like to give a very compassionate and humble critique of the system as is and go over what I think are some of the fatal design flaws that we can hopefully remedy as we move forward. So I'm going to go through these, and some of them I might have hopeful ideas around, and some of them I might not. So we'll see. Okay, let's just get going. Fatal design flaws that are keeping our system oppressive and not liberatory. So first one is single age cohorts. There's a lot of research around this. Mixed age grouping is just better holistically for development. Have you read Lord of the Flies? I mean, I guess that's mixed age too, but that's what it feels like to have, 15 8-year-old boys in one group. It's just not a natural dynamic, and the system certainly isn't equipped to support the dynamic in a healthy way. And so personally, I experienced a mixed age cohort in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And along with a lot of other aspects, that was by far the best part of my experience in the public education system, was that mixed age setting. But there's other ways you can do this too. It can be project based. We can dream of the remedies later, but I really feel like designing around things that are administrative and not actually what's based in development. It's a design flaw. This is not, the goal is not management. The goal is development, right? So we need to keep our goals straight. Along with that is standardized pacing. So take a group of 10-year-olds on a hike. Are they all going to go start to finish at the same time? Keep the same pace the whole way? Not if they're free to do so, right? Your kids, if they learned to walk, maybe there's a window where they all learned to walk within, kind of an average you could come up with. But was the path to getting there identical? No, they learned to crawl at different times. They did different weird little movements on the ground and rolled at different times. And their paths were different, their paces were different. And it's the same with learning anything. And it's not a personal failure to go at your own pace. And so when we get into things like safety and belonging and autonomy and all the things required to actually learn, if you're made to feel behind perpetually because you have a different pace, then you're just set up for failure. So, another design flaw that I think we need to leave in the past is siloed subjects, along with just creating not only a hierarchy of subjects, bias around like who can participate in which subjects and all of that. The siloing of subjects creates this siloing of self, and it fragments our experience so that the learning is partial. And if we want holistic development, then we want the full experience to be integrated, right? And so we're not just looking at this part. We're experiencing it as fully as we can. And so, spelling is great, love it. And it's easily paired with writing and with reading. And in a project where that is going to be important, right? So, stop siloing subjects. Another fatal design flaw, I know, is rewarding compliance over curiosity. So, whether we want to blame it on scale or social norms or history, or any of the things and the combination of factors, we praise and we reward and we give accolades around being in line, being on time, doing as you're told, following instructions. And when it comes to seeking an alternative, asking for like another I'm trying to figure out how this looks so that people could understand, because saying that curiosity isn't rewarded seems like a blanket statement, and so I want to give very concrete examples of what this looks like in schools. And I guess like part of it would be, like raise your hand. And so like that's about compliance. Whereas like if we prioritize curiosity, maybe it would be like write what you have to say, write down a question. Maybe that's the practice. You have a whiteboard and you write down a question or whatever. I don't know. Like it's just things don't have to look the way they look. Like when we're thinking about designing this, we do not have to bring everything forward. We can drop stuff like the raising of the hand. Like, does that align with the values that we want? And I'm not saying it does or it doesn't, but I'm just saying these are all of the behaviors and the things that we need to assess, because do we reward compliance or do we reward curiosity? And I think in most cases, we reward compliance. Another fatal design flaw, this one I could talk about all day. Passive learning structures. Sit and listen to a lecture. I actually was so surprised when I started my student teaching and people were doing that. I was like, wait, this is still happening in high school? I'm bored. I'm so bored. But, not just that, like any kind of, how many videos your elementary student is watching during the day? How much time they're being engaged on their Chromebook? Like, I think there's time and space for digital tools for sure, but if you are working with quantities, why are you doing this? Like, work with the quantities. And so if you want holistic development, again, we're siloing these things where it's a visual processing of looking at symbols of numbers, and yet I have no tangible manipulatives. Make it tactile. Add, and you see this coming through Band-Aids. But again, these fatal flaws, I think you can't design around them or on top of them. You have to build a new foundation. So the passive learning structures, anything where the learner doesn't have to be engaged. Like most of the day, they actually don't have to be engaged. And from, I'm not hating on teachers or like that they can't get their students engaged. Like I'm pointing out, this is a systemic failure. There's no way to engage these students the way that it's set up. So, the opposite of a passive learning structure would be something that ties into this next fatal design flaw, which is separation from real life. And so if you think, again, in like a high school setting or something, why doesn't every teenager have some sort of internship, mentorship, like some sort of apprenticeship that they participate in? Like that shouldn't be ice, like a cherry on top, right? It should just be the way it is. Again, personal opinions, but when there's no authenticity to the experience, you're not in the forest studying the animals, you're in the zoo monitoring their behavior. It's not the same. Like doing a word problem about how Johnny sold 3 apples for this many and Mary sold 3 apples for that many is not the same as having a competing lemonade stand with your neighbor across the street. The experience of doing something, being actively involved in some sort of experience, it is a learning, is how you learn. And so if you're not required to be active and you're just a vessel being poured into, I guess it depends on the state of your vessel, how much of that you're going to retain. And the state of your vessel is not an equitable matter usually, so account for that. Another fatal design flaw on top of all of these that I don't want to say is the crux, but it certainly is this foundational piece where if we don't go down to this level and change things at this level, what is even the point in my mind? So the final fatal design flaw in our current system of schooling is that it was never fully resourced. Okay, it's economically starved. The funding of public schools based on property taxes is inherently going to perpetuate the socioeconomic hierarchies that exist in the land use practices of our country. And the functioning of the system as it is now relies on unpaid labor by mostly women, teachers and mothers who are doing the most, and that is not sustainable. And it also does not create an environment where true holistic reciprocal care and learning can take place. So I hope that you will join me as I continue this conversation and start to not just point out all the problems, but look to some of the solutions. And I hope you'll join me over on TikTok talking about this at Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And I'll see you again next time. Bye.